Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Maxwell Grant with Walpole Media. Today, we are joined by Walpole Public Schools Dean of Student Support and Attendance, Edward Connor, who will be retiring at the end of the school semester. Mr. Connor, thank you for joining us. I know it's weird me calling you Edward Connor because I was a former student of yours.
Yeah,
but
that's okay, Max.
It's very glad to see you here and happy retirement.
Thank you very much.
Our first question is, how long have you been employed with the Walpole Public School District, and when is your last day as the Dean of Student Support and Attendance?
I started in Walpole in 2005, and so that makes 20 years. I'll complete 20 years at the end of this month, which my retirement date is June 30th because I'm a full year employee. So
It's a little weird to think that you started in 2005 and I was born in 2006.
yes, well,
And
you know.
I'm not trying to make you seem old, but oh my goodness, that's a very long time working.
That's
at
all
Walpole
right,
Public
Max, because
Schools.
I am getting up there, but I like to think that I look pretty good for my age.
How are you feeling about that day?
Good, you know, mixed emotions because even though it's 20 years here, it's 32 years total as an educator. I started as a Spanish teacher at Natick High School back in 1993, and then became department chair at Natick High before I came to Walpole as assistant principal in 2005. So it's a lot of miles on the road and a lot of really great experiences and a lot of fantastic memories. Met a lot of great, students who are, some I'm still friends with today who are in their 40s. And a lot of terrific colleagues and wonderful teachers that I've met through the years. So it's kind of a bittersweet day. I mean, I'm happy to retire because, it's a lot of work, this job. And it doesn't matter whether you're an administrator or in the classroom. It's a 24/7, 365 day. I mean, I know we get the summers off.
Exactly.
At least the teachers do. But you really need that summer because when you're during the school year, you pretty much eat, breathe, and sleep teaching. It's always on your mind, always.
That's awesome. So when did you know you wanted to go into education as a graduate of the Walpole School District? And was it your intention to stay at the Walpole School District?
Not at all. I walked across the stage after getting my diploma. One of the few graduation ceremonies that were actually indoors in the gym here at Walpole High many, many years ago. I'm not going to say how long ago, but as a proud alumnus of Walpole High, I did not think I would be back. I'll be honest with you. I went to school and I decided to study Spanish because it just happened to be something that I truly enjoyed and that I was decent at. I mean, not the smartest kid in the class and not the kid with the highest grades, but probably the kid who spoke the most just because, I have this talking thing so that I've never been afraid to, let my voice be heard, whether it was in English or Spanish. Went to college, like I say, got my degree, and then I went into banking. Crazily enough, I was going to be a rich international banker, except that I hated banking. I mean, I really hated it. And so that's when I decided to go back to school to get my master's in education, to become a teacher. And that was in probably 1990. And I'm so glad that I did because as the first time I walked into a classroom to do a student teaching gig back in 92, I was like, what took me so long to get here? Because it had been a few years since I graduated college, but I'm glad that I did everything. I had all the experience before I became a teacher. I think that helped make me the best teacher that I could be doing those things before, going right from college into education.
Exactly. Can you tell us about your experience serving as the Dean of Student Support and Attendance for the past year, and what were the responsibilities that you had to entail?
I did a lot of, I had a few specific missions that Dr. Hoff and Dr. Goff and Dr. Hahn had for me. One was to try and work with families to get the kids to be in school as much as possible because one of the things that the state measures, one of the measures they use for schools is attendance. And if a student misses more than 10% of the school year, you are labeled as chronically absent. And the more chronic absentees you have in your district, it's kind of like a ding against you. And, before COVID, we were at 7.1% of our students were chronically absent, which, I mean, it's not great. And kids are absent for a lot of reasons. But once COVID hit, we went up to probably around 12%. And then last year, we were at 9.3%, which is good. But Dr. Goff and Dr. Hunt really want us to get back down to that the lower levels and the 7s and the 6s and the 5 because, you know, students are going to learn best when they're in school, but we also know that there are reasons why they're not in school. So one of my main functions was to really reach out to families, reach out to the community, talk about why school is important, what the laws are, and what the regulations are that parents need to follow, and how it can affect students intellectually, socially, emotionally, if they're not here, and how we can help them make sure that they are here. So that was probably like the biggest thing I had to do. I also I worked with the principal of the middle school, Mrs. Ruggiero, to talk about maybe what can we do to bring sports to the middle school. And I'm currently in the process of finishing up a report on the athletic department for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, because they're going to start accrediting high school athletic departments. They had come up with a set of standards, and so I've been working on that throughout the year, and I'm finishing up that report to send in, and hopefully, while there are some things that we need to improve, there are a lot of things that we do well here in athletics in Walpole, and they'll probably do a visitation in the fall, and then they'll decide what we need to do to become accredited. So those are those are the main things. But one of the things I got to do for fun this year, I wouldn't say it's fun, but they asked me to be it turned out to be fun, to be the interim principal at Boyden while their principal was on a medical leave for 6 weeks. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'd never been in the elementary setting ever. I've taught a lot of high school. I worked a lot of middle school, and she asked me, she's like, look, you're a certified administrator, and we really need somebody to kind of, help keep the ship steady while he's out for these 6 weeks. And I said, yeah, happy to do it. And it was a great experience. I really loved the elementary school kids too. So it was funny, in the last year of my career, I ended up kind of coming the whole game. The only thing I haven't done is work with pre-K students, and they scare me the most. So I'm glad I got to miss that one.
That's very special because I went to Boyden.
Okay.
When I was a kid, and I remember Mr. Dearborn, that principal. He was very special to me. He helped me out in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Could you describe some of the challenges you faced while serving in the position that you served this past year?
I'd say the biggest challenge is when it comes to attendance. A lot of it has to do with COVID, and where kids weren't in school and they could still learn, like not probably at their best while they're out of school. That I think the mindset for a lot of families was like, well, school's really not that important if they can just do it at home, which is why our attendance rates rose. And trying to change that mindset for families to say, look, we know that kids are going to be out sick, and that was one of the things I worked on with parents to say, they're not going to be here all the time, we get that. But, sometimes if they have the sniffles, they're okay to come to school.
Yeah.
If they have a fever or they're thrown up, then they definitely should stay home and see a doctor. If they're having trouble, with other student conflict or some, maybe some emotional things, that's what the schools are for, to help you navigate that. Not alone, because every kid thinks that, oh, it's just me going through this. And little do they know that the counselors and the administrators and the teachers have worked with, a lot of families to try and help kids get what they need to be successful in school, and to try and help them realize these people can help you to get your child back to school, because that's really where you want them. So that was the biggest challenge, trying to change mindset about making sure that families knew, get your kid to school as often as possible, unless there are extenuating circumstances like any types of illness.
Exactly. Can you explain what chronic absenteeism is and why the issue is important to both to you and the school district as a whole?
Yeah, like I said before, if you miss 10% of the school year, and that's basically, if it's the whole year, it's 18 absences. And we go to school for 10 months.
Yeah.
So if you're absent 2 times a month, that's 20 absences.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like very much, but you have hit chronic absenteeism levels in just 2 absences a month. And so, and the reason it's good to not have that many absences, because the more consistently that students attend school, the better they're going to perform in those classes, currently and beyond. It also, the number of students who are chronically absent through the years tend to be those students who have more higher dropout rates, which is not what we want, because we feel like at a minimum, you want every student to graduate with the skills necessary to earn their high school diploma to do whatever they want afterwards. So trying to get them here to learn all those things and get that diploma is really important. And yes, does it matter to us like what the state says about these are your numbers? It does. You know, the same thing for any other metric they might use for, you know, how to rate schools in Massachusetts, where, you know, we are like one of the top states in the country. So we want to make sure that while we're one of the top states, that Walpole is one of the top districts in the state. So.
Absolutely. I got to experience this firsthand last year, but some people may not know that you also had a successful acting career during your time at the Walpole School District. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I've always been a thespian. I did a lot of it when I was younger. In high school, we had, it was called a senior play. It was only for seniors. And we did Get Smart. And I got to be Mr. Big, who was the leader of chaos.
Oh, my goodness.
So I was the bad guy, which was fun for me because I'm a pretty good guy most of the time. So it was a nice role to play. And then I acted in college. You know, we had a theater company where I went at St. Anselm College. And then when I got here, I found out, you know, I became friends with Mr. Allen, and he's like, oh, I got this film festival. He's like, you'd be great. And I'm like, all you got to do is ask. And that's what we were talking earlier. And like, if any kid asked me to be in their movie, the answer was always yes. I would find a way to make it happen. No matter how busy I was in the front office, I would make time to help them be in the movie. Just because I think it's important for the students to see, like, especially in the main office, like if you watch like Mr. Imbush, you know, people say, wow, that's the principal. And they're like, yeah, he's just a regular guy and he wants to support kids too. And so I really enjoy continuing my, you know, thespianism here at the high school. And who knows, Max, maybe in my retirement, I'll get into some
Hollywood
shows.
could be calling.
Hey, you know, 5 shows daily. That's what it was when I was in class.
All right. What are the most notable changes you have seen in the Walpole School District that you've observed over the course of your career? And how would you compare being a student in the Walpole School District, public school district, to a faculty member?
I'll start there because when you're a student, you see one side of what goes on, and you're just here to do your thing and, you know, try and learn as much as you can. Little do you know that when you're an administrator or even a teacher in the building, which I wasn't here, but when I became a teacher, there's so much that's involved in what you're doing as an educator to try and get to kids. I have friends who are like, you know, what's a big deal with teaching? I'm like, it's like it is the hardest job I've ever had. And they're like, well, why? You just like teaching a bunch of kids. I said, okay, you're in sales, right? And they're like, yeah, you know, I'm in sales. I was like, okay, well, imagine you have 125 customers that you have to work with. And they're like, okay, yeah, I can do that. Like, imagine if you had to have meetings with all 125 of those people every day, day after day. And then you had to prepare for every meeting every day, day after day. And then give feedback to those customers, which is what students are.
Exactly.
You know, as often as possible, probably maybe not every day, but as much as you can. And they said, wow, that is kind of a lot. I said, yeah, it really is. So when I tell you that it's a hard job, you ought to pay attention because, you know, I'm not kidding. But everybody thinks, you know, hey, just because they went to school, which is like the student part, just because I went to school, you know, I could teach or I could run a school.
Exactly.
And I always say, well, have you ever taken a flight in a plane?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah. Well, how many? Oh, a lot. I fly all the time. Like, do you think you could fly the plane? Oh, no. I said, well, welcome to education.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a double standard that people may not understand.
Right. Until you get in there and walk in somebody's shoes.
Exactly.
But as far as like the changes, I would say over the past 20 years, what I've really seen is a strong focus in all the schools to try and make sure that we knew exactly what the kids were going to be learning and how to make adjustments if they weren't learning, to have some type of, you know, measure. And I don't mean the MCAS. I mean, like, you need to know this is what's expected. These are the skills that I'm trying to teach. And then if the things that I do work, okay, note that and do it again. If it doesn't work, I have to make adjustments. But we also here in this town wanted to make sure that if, let's say we were twin brothers, all right, and we were both in the same grade, but we had 2 different teachers, but you're learning something totally different than I am. Our parent would be like, well, wait a second. Why is one son learning this in the same grade as my other son is learning something totally different? So continuity and consistency among grade levels and among subject matter has become a strong focus in this town, and the curriculum work that's been done over the past 20 years is phenomenal, and I don't think a lot of people know that. But I think if you talk to any of the teachers and if you talk to any of the administrators, I think one of the things that they'll be proud of is how consistent and how solid our curriculum has become over the years. Not to say that it's not changing, but at least it's not, everybody's doing their own thing in classes.
Exactly.
Now people know what they're doing and they can talk about it, and that way you're on the same page and you can share materials as well. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Exactly.
So
yeah. Could you tell us one of your favorite memories throughout your time with the Walpole schools?
There's a lot. But there are some that stand out. I'd say one was my very first day as assistant principal. There was concern that a student might be under the influence of something, and that's something that I really didn't have to deal with very much. So Mr. Imbush remembers that day, and he brought it up. They had a retirement party for me, and he's like, "I remember your eyes were like." I said, "Well, that's because that was true." Because I was like, "Oh no, how do we help this person?" Turned out the student was fine. It wasn't what they thought, but I'll never forget, that was the first day, like 8 o'clock on the first day of school, and we had to deal with that, so I'll never forget that. All the movies that I've been in, work with the kids, are really strong core memories for me. Working with all the staff, as colleagues to try and help them be better, because I think as administrators and teachers, a lot of people see a divide. When really what it is, as an administrator, I was always trying to help people be better at their job, because what you do as a teacher matters, because the people you have in front of you are the most important people in the district. No offense to the parents out there or the people who don't have kids at this at schools at this time, but it's a little cliche. Students are the future, but you have to make sure that the kids are the number one priority, and the teachers, from the administrative, at least I can speak for me. I always told the teachers, "Hey, look, I got to make sure that we do what's best for the student." I said, and the teachers are really close second, but I'm going to work with you to try to help you be as the best teacher you can be for those kids who are in front of you every day.
I know one of my favorite memories is when I was at Bird Middle School and we would do the turkey trot, and you would be in your inflatable chicken costume.
That's
and
right.
I remember seeing that for the first time, and I was cracking up laughing because I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. One of my principals is wearing a chicken costume and is running around with it. That is the best thing ever.
I was pretty sore the next day. I'll admit it. But yeah, that was a good one too. And one of the teachers there took a picture of me that day and gave it to me, and I still have that too. So a lot of good times.
What makes you the most proud of being part of the Walpole Public Schools?
I'd say trying to make the Walpole Public Schools the best place possible for all kids. For some kids, school is like awesome. It comes to them quite naturally. They get along well with everybody, the teachers, the other students. But what I feel the most proud about is work with those kids where school's not easy, where school is a struggle, whether it be socially or emotionally, to help them. We would say find their niche or find their tribe so that they can be successful. And you don't have to have, 100 friends. If I could help somebody find one or two friends, help them find something that they like to study, one or two subjects, and to get them to the finish line of getting that diploma. I had a few kids like that who really struggled, but they made it. Yeah. And there weren't that many, but those are the kids that I remember that I'm the most proud about.
I definitely have a few friends that I still have today that I'm always in touch with, because we were just that close, and those are like the friends that mean the most to me. Yeah. Because I didn't really want to have like broad friendships where I'm just like bouncing from group to group. I liked my close knit of friends, and I really got to bond with them. I think that was one of the most important things for me in the Walpole Public School District, is having those close friends that I could just be with every single day.
Yeah, I've been out of high school for over 40 years, and I'm still friends with some of the guys I hung out with back then.
That's so special. What is the most important thing you've learned throughout your career?
To listen. It's easy as that. Most people want to be heard, and if they come and they talk to you about something, they don't always want your advice. They just want you to pay attention. They want you to hear them, and if they want help, they'll either ask you, or I would offer, like, what can I do to help you? But the most important skill, I think, that any of us can have is the ability to listen to people, not just hear them, but to actually listen to what they're saying and try and, if they're going through something, help them with that, however that may be, whatever works for them.
Exactly.
So,
What will you miss the most about working with the Walpole School District?
I'll miss the people. I mean, the people are really, that's my jam. I'm a people person. It doesn't matter whether you're like an elementary school kid. I love working with them. Middle school kid, I love them. High school kids, they're awesome too. I'll miss all the teachers. I think, they're just, they do God's work. And so I'll miss the administrators who try and, help us do the best we can and get us all the resources we need. So it's the people that I'll miss the most.
There's a quote in one of the Thor movies in Marvel saying, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. And I feel like he kind of just said that quote like almost indirectly with the Walpole School District is Walpole's not a place, it's a people that you really got to connect with.
It is. I mean, we have a lot of buildings of stone and mortar. We have some new ones, but those are just things. The heart and soul of any of the buildings are the people that are in it.
That's so special. What are you most looking forward to at this time?
Sleeping past 6 o'clock in the morning on a Monday through Friday. That's probably number one. And like I say, in this job, during the school year, you're constantly thinking about it, like always in the back of your mind. I used to work before as a teacher where I was in sales, and I could walk out the door at 5 and not think about the job again until 9 the next morning. Never the case in this job.
Exactly.
So I won't miss having to think about it all the time. And, like I say, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of late hours, a lot of 50, 60, 70-hour weeks.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to just kind of relax. And I won't miss all the time that it takes, and I'll have time to do whatever.
Maybe find an acting career.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
How would you describe working with Dr. Goff at Bird Middle School?
It was great. It almost didn't happen. I mean, I was very happy here at the high school for 10 years, and she called me, and she had an opening, and she said, I'd really love to work with you at the middle school. And I said, no, thanks a lot, but I'm good. And I had a short conversation. We hung up, and Dr. Hahn and I at the time, we had worked together as assistant principals for a bunch of years, and he was a principal over at Johnson, and he called me and he said, did Dr. Goff just call you and, talk about the job? And I said, yeah, I said no. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, because I think you would really love it at the middle school. And I said, I'm a high school guy, and that's what I know for the past, it was 22 years, I'd say. Yeah, 22 years I did high school. And then she called me back the next day. And she's like, I'd really love for you to think about it. If you come down, we could talk about it some more. And so then we started talking. I talked to my wife about it, and at that point in my life, I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's time for a change. And I got to tell you, Max, I'm so glad I did. No offense to high schools. Like I said, I did for 22 years. But I really loved middle school.
Yeah.
And I loved high school, but when I met all those middle school kids, and they were like, hey, Mr. Connor, in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Whereas in high school, you walk to the cafeteria, and the kids are like, So I found middle school it became my GM.
Because they still have like that kid joy in them in a way.
Yeah.
How would you describe Dr. Goff's impact to you as an administrator, and how she helped you become a better faculty member? Yeah,
I think, she was great. I mean, she taught me a lot of things, especially about time management. It's hard to say because I'm older than she is. So, and I learned a lot of things from a lot of people. But one of the things I can say, honestly about her is that I feel like she always did things the right way. I worked with some other people in the past where I learned not to do that, like don't do that. But she was great in terms of time management and focusing on the things that are important at the time so that we could get to what we needed to do after. And she really helped me become a better time manager.
That's awesome.
It was great, but I don't want to take anything away from Mr. Imbush or Mr. Hahn or any of the other people that I worked with here in the district, because I feel like working with all of them really made me the best educator that I could be. It's a true team and group effort.
So our final question that we have here is, You did the news here at Walpole High School and at Bird Middle School, and you used to always finish your segments with the quotes, "Seek friendship, speak truth, do brave things."
Yeah.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about how that came about and what it means to you as a person?
Yeah, it kind of became my motto over the years. Like you wouldn't know this, but it didn't. It kind of came out of a sense of need about 15 years ago when I was assistant principal here at the high school. It wasn't a great culture at the time. There were a lot of misbehaviors. There were a lot of people treating each other badly. A lot of disrespect to the building, to the staff, to the administrators. Mostly the disrespect was back and forth to the kids, each other, which really bothered me as a person because I've always been a really positive, person and try to see the best in others, even when I know that everybody's not going to be at their best all the time.
Exactly.
And I found that as an assistant principal, this is what I was doing at the time, I was like, kids view me as an authority figure. Yeah. And they view, at least in high school, most adults as an authority figure, unless they get to know them better. And they have frequently been told what not to do. Don't do this, don't do that. Stop this, stop that. And I felt like at that time I needed to address the group as a whole and talk about this is what it's supposed to be like. These are how the expectations should be. And so instead of telling kids to not do things, I felt like I needed a positive message. And I don't know, it wasn't just like something that happened. I really thought about this and, I came up with these, 3 phrases because I felt like, if you can seek friendship, you don't have to know the person. You don't even have to be their friend. And I'm not saying that you have to be friends, but at least you can be friendly. Mm-hmm. And if you're friendly, you can be respectful. And you can coexist in a place even if you're different. And that's actually the best way to exist because if we were all the same, we'd be so boring. Yeah. But I wanted kids to learn, or at least to try to seek friendship and see somebody for what the good relationship that they might be able to have. It doesn't have to be a super strong relationship. You don't have to be, like I said, best friends, but at least try to, be friendly and be nice to others. So that's where seek friendship came from, because if you can do that, things will be better in terms of how you treated each other. Speak truth. A lot of kids were not taking ownership for some of the things they were doing and some of the things they were saying. And while it's not always easy to be honest about mistakes, I felt that if you can at least recognize that and just speak the truth of that, you can really learn from it. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted people to be honest about where they were, about what they were doing, and if they made a mistake, admit it, and let's go from there. Because any kid who I worked with, if they could, we talked about what happened, and if they could see the error of what happened and say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that, that was a totally different conversation than the kid who just lie, deny. Yeah. So I always encourage everybody to just speak truth, whatever that truth may be. And it wasn't always, bad stuff, but because sometimes speaking truth means, complimenting somebody for something that they've done that most people won't notice. And so if you speak that truth, you can make a difference in that person's life. Absolutely. Maybe one day, maybe for every day. They'll always go back and say, I remember that time in high school, Max said X, Y, Z to me. Like, that really stuck with me, and I'm really happy he said it. Whereas a lot of kids wouldn't say it because they don't want to speak that truth because they don't want to put themselves out there. Mm-hmm. And then finally, do brave things. I wanted people to know that it was okay to take risks. Yeah. It's okay to put yourself out there. Sometimes, you might get hurt, whether it be like if it's a relationship or you try out for a part in the play, you don't get it, or you want to be on this particular team, but you don't make the team you want to get on, you're on the JV team or the freshman team instead. But at least you're being brave and trying things, even though you're afraid, because you can't live in fear. And that's what bravery is. It's what you do in spite of fear. Yeah. And the more times you can show your bravery, the better your life will be, even if you don't attain all the things you were trying to get. But if you never try, you'll never get there.
That's very special.
So that's why it became, seek friendship, speak truth, do brave things. And I hope everybody can do that.
That's very
every
special.
Day.
Mr. Connor, I thank you for this interview. I appreciate your time.
Max, my pleasure.
It's so great to see you again.
Yeah.
And thank you all again for joining us today. For Walpole Media, I'm Maxwell Grant.